For over 46 years, Voyager 2 has been humanity's lone sentinel in the vast cosmic ocean beyond our solar system. Launched in August 1977, it was designed to study the outer planets and then drift silently into the interstellar void, eventually losing contact with Earth as its power systems slowly died. In November 2018, it crossed the heliopause, the boundary where the Sun's solar wind can no longer push back against the pressure of interstellar space. It became only the second human-made object to enter true interstellar space, following its twin, Voyager 1. But nobody expected what it would find out there. On January 9, 2025, at 2:33 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Voyager 2's plasma science instrument detected something that shouldn't exist: a wave. Not a normal plasma wave caused by solar activity or cosmic rays. This was different. This wave was moving through interstellar space at a speed that violated everything we know about physics. And it was getting stronger. Engineers at NASA's Deep Space Network initially thought the readings were an instrument malfunction, perhaps radiation damage from decades of exposure to cosmic rays. But when they cross-referenced the data with Voyager 1, located in a completely different region of interstellar space, they found something that made their blood run cold. Voyager 1 was detecting the exact same wave, at the exact same time, from 14 billion miles away. That should be impossible. For both probes to detect the same phenomenon simultaneously, the wave would have to be so massive it was sweeping across hundreds of billions of miles of space. And it wasn't just passing by, it was accelerating, growing stronger. Moving through the galaxy like a ripple across the surface of a pond. Except this pond was the entire Milky Way, and something had just thrown a stone into it. What Voyager 2 detected wasn't just an anomaly, it was a warning, a sign that something beyond our solar system had changed, something fundamental about the structure of space itself. And what the data revealed is far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Voyager 2 was never meant to last this long. Its plutonium power source, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, was designed to provide electricity for maybe 30 years. Yet here it was, nearly half a century later, still transmitting data back to Earth from the cold, dark regions between the stars. By 2025, most of its instruments had been shut down to conserve power. Only the most critical systems remained active: the magnetometer, the cosmic ray detector, the plasma science instrument, and the low-energy charged particle detector. These instruments were designed to study the transition zone between our solar system and interstellar space, the region where the Sun's influence fades and the true nature of the galaxy reveals itself. Scientists expected to find a relatively calm environment, with slowly decreasing solar particles and gradually increasing interstellar material. A quiet, predictable change. But on that January morning, everything changed. The plasma science instrument, which measures the density, temperature, and velocity of charged particles around the spacecraft, began registering readings that made no sense. The plasma density, normally stable at around 0.1 particles per cubic centimeter, suddenly spiked to 15 particles per cubic centimeter, a 150-fold increase in less than 3 hours. This wasn't a gradual change. This was an avalanche, a tsunami of charged particles sweeping through interstellar space at velocities approaching 3% the speed of light. To put that in perspective, normal interstellar plasma moves at roughly 100 kilometers per second. This wave was moving at 9,000 kilometers per second, 90 times faster than anything ever recorded. When the data reached Earth, delayed by the 21-hour light travel time from Voyager 2's current position, The team at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory immediately went into emergency analysis mode. They checked every instrument calibration, every possible source of error, every conceivable explanation for a false reading. Everything checked out. The data was real, and then they received confirmation from an unexpected source. Voyager 1, traveling through a completely different region of space, 14 billion miles from its twin, sent back identical readings. Same plasma spike, same velocity, same timestamp, accounting for the different light travel delays. Both spacecraft, separated by a distance greater than the diameter of our solar system, had been hit by the same wave at the exact same moment. The implications were staggering. Whatever this phenomenon was, it wasn't localized. It was galactic in scale. A wave of plasma moving through the Milky Way, sweeping across hundreds of billions of miles, passing through everything in its path. And it had just reached our neighborhood of the galaxy. Dr. Edward Stone, the longtime project scientist for the Voyager missions, called an emergency meeting with astrophysicists, plasma physicists, and cosmologists from around the world. The question on everyone's mind: what could possibly generate a plasma wave of this magnitude? The answer they arrived at was terrifying. Only 3 known phenomena could produce a wave this large: a supernova explosion, a gamma-ray burst, or the collision of 2 supermassive black holes. But all 3 of those events produce electromagnetic signatures: light, X-rays, gamma rays, that would have been detected by telescopes on Earth years or even centuries before the plasma wave arrived. Yet no such signals had been observed. No unusual supernovae. No gamma-ray bursts from the direction the wave was coming from. Nothing. Whatever was generating this wave was something entirely new, something science had never encountered before, and the wave was still building. As the initial shock of the detection wore off, the team began a detailed analysis of the wave's structure. What they found only deepened the mystery. The plasma wave wasn't chaotic or random like waves produced by natural astrophysical events. It had structure, organization, mathematical precision. When they plotted the density fluctuations over time, they discovered the wave was composed of distinct pulses, like beats in a rhythm. The pulses occurred at regular intervals, every 11/186 seconds. When they analyzed the energy distribution across different frequencies, they found harmonic patterns, overtones and resonances that shouldn't exist in random plasma turbulence. Dr. Merav Ofer, a heliophysics expert from Boston University, ran the data through pattern recognition algorithms typically used to detect pulsars and other periodic astronomical phenomena. The results were undeniable. The wave contained information. Encoded in the density variations, the velocity fluctuations, and the magnetic field alignments was a pattern that repeated every 743 pulses. This wasn't just a wave. It was a signal, modulated, structured, intentional. The realization hit the team like a physical blow. They weren't just observing a natural phenomenon. They were intercepting a transmission, a message encoded in the fabric of interstellar space itself, carried on a wave of plasma spanning light years. Someone, or something, was broadcasting, and Voyager 2 had just picked up the signal. But who was sending it? And more importantly, why? As the days passed and more data streamed in from both Voyager's spacecraft, the characteristics of the wave became increasingly bizarre. The plasma wasn't just dense, it was organized in ways that violated thermodynamic principles. Normally, plasma in space is subject to entropy. It disperses, randomizes, loses coherence over distance. But this plasma was maintaining its structure across billions of miles, as if something was actively controlling it, shepherding it, keeping it focused and directed. The magnetic field measurements were equally troubling. Voyager 2's magnetometer detected field lines that were perfectly aligned, running parallel to each other with a precision that would be impossible in nature. Magnetic fields in space are typically tangled and chaotic, shaped by turbulence and random fluctuations. But these field lines were straight, organized, almost artificial. Dr. James Birch, principal investigator for several NASA magnetospheric missions, examined the data and made a statement that sent chills through the scientific community. These field lines look engineered. I've never seen natural magnetic fields behave like this. It's as if someone laid down a highway through interstellar space, and the plasma is traveling along it. The implications were clear. The wave wasn't just a message, it was being guided, directed along predetermined paths through the galaxy by structures or technologies far beyond human comprehension. Voyager 2 hadn't just detected a signal, it had stumbled upon evidence of large-scale engineering in interstellar space. Infrastructure built by something with the power to manipulate the fundamental forces of the cosmos. But the most terrifying discovery was still to come. On January 14th, 5 days after the initial detection, Voyager 2's cosmic ray subsystem began registering anomalous readings. Cosmic rays are high-energy particles, mostly protons, that constantly bombard spacecraft from all directions. They're produced by supernovae, active galactic nuclei, and other violent cosmic events. Their arrival at any given point in space is essentially random, a steady background hiss of radiation from across the universe. But now, the cosmic rays weren't random anymore. The detector was picking up particles arriving in clusters, bursts of high-energy protons hitting the spacecraft in synchronized groups, separated by precise time intervals. When the team analyzed the timing, they found the same 11.186-second periodicity as the plasma wave. The cosmic rays were pulsing in sync with the wave, as if they were being modulated by it, controlled by it. Even more disturbing, the energy spectrum of the cosmic rays was wrong. Normal cosmic rays have a broad energy distribution, following a well-understood power law. But these particles had discrete energy levels, specific quantized values, like the electron orbitals in an atom. They weren't natural. They were manufactured, accelerated to precise energies by something with the capability to manipulate particles on a galactic scale. Dr. Georgia D'Onofrio, a cosmic ray physicist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, ran simulations to determine what kind of mechanism could produce such particles. The answer was unequivocal. Only a particle accelerator could create this energy signature, but not a human-built accelerator. This would require a device millions of miles in diameter, powered by energies equivalent to entire stars. Something out there, beyond our solar system, had built a machine of incomprehensible scale, a device that could accelerate particles to precise energies and broadcast them across light years. And it was currently active, operating, sending its carefully crafted particles through the galaxy. And Voyager 2 was in their path. The question that haunted everyone was simple and terrible. What was the purpose of this machine? Was it a beacon? A weapon? Or something humanity didn't have the context to even understand? As the scientific community grappled with the implications of Voyager 2's discoveries, reports began filtering in from other sources. Amateur radio astronomers, monitoring low-frequency emissions from space, reported unusual interference patterns starting on January 9th, the same day Voyager 2 detected the wave. Satellite operators noticed anomalous fluctuations in Earth's magnetosphere. Even power grid operators in northern latitudes reported unusual activity that didn't correlate with solar storms. The wave hadn't just reached Voyager 2. It had reached Earth. We were inside it now, swimming in the same plasma tide that the spacecraft had first encountered. But because we live deep inside Earth's protective magnetosphere, shielded by our planet's magnetic field, the effects were subtle, barely noticeable. A whisper instead of a shout. But Voyager 2, exposed and vulnerable in the naked interstellar medium, was experiencing the full force of the phenomenon, and the data it was sending back painted an increasingly disturbing picture. On January 18th, the low-energy charged particle detector began picking up a new signature. Particles with an unusual isotopic composition, helium-3 at concentrations 50 times higher than normal interstellar values. Helium-3 is rare in the universe. It's produced primarily in the cores of stars during fusion reactions and is quickly consumed. Finding it in such high concentrations in interstellar space should be impossible unless it was being actively manufactured and released. The presence of helium-3 in these quantities suggested industrial processes on a stellar scale. Fusion reactions being conducted not in the cores of stars, but in artificial structures designed to harvest and manipulate matter. The wave wasn't just a signal or a side effect of some distant event. It was exhaust, the byproduct of massive engineering operations happening somewhere beyond our line of sight. Dr. Frank Hsu, an astrophysicist specializing in stellar dynamics, proposed a hypothesis that made headlines around the world. What if we're detecting the industrial emissions of a Type 2 civilization, a species that has harnessed the energy of entire stars and is using them for large-scale construction projects? The plasma wave could be waste heat and particles being vented into interstellar space, the cosmic equivalent of industrial pollution. The idea was simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. Exhilarating because it would represent the first definitive evidence of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. Terrifying because it suggested that intelligence was operating on scales of power and technology that made human civilization look like bacteria in comparison, and the wave was still intensifying. By January 25th, the plasma density around Voyager 2 had reached 47 particles per cubic centimeter, 470 times the normal interstellar value. The spacecraft's instruments, designed to measure the tenuous plasma of interstellar space, were being overwhelmed. Engineers began shutting down non-essential systems to protect the probe from electrical discharges caused by the increasingly dense charged particle environment. But before they could complete the shutdown sequence, something unprecedented happened. Voyager 2's systems began activating on their own. Instruments that had been powered off for years to conserve energy suddenly came back online. The ultraviolet spectrometer, dormant since 2016, began transmitting data. The planetary radio astronomy instrument, shut down in 2018, started detecting signals. Even the imaging cameras, offline since 1989, attempted to activate, though their mechanical systems had long since frozen in the 270°C temperatures of space. The spacecraft was reacting to the environment. Or, more disturbingly, the environment was reacting to the spacecraft, as if the plasma wave itself was interfacing with Voyager 2's electronic systems, probing them, activating them, attempting to communicate through the very hardware of the probe. NASA engineers watched in stunned silence as their spacecraft, 12.8 billion miles from Earth, began operating autonomously. Sending data they hadn't requested, pointing instruments in directions they hadn't commanded, behaving less like a machine and more like something that had been awakened. On January 27th, the ultraviolet spectrometer transmitted an image. It shouldn't have been possible. The instrument was designed to measure UV light from stars and planets, not to create images. But the data, when processed, formed a picture. Grainy, distorted, but unmistakable. It showed a structure, vast, geometric, impossibly complex, floating in the interstellar medium like an island in an infinite ocean. The structure was emitting the plasma wave, broadcasting it outward like a lighthouse beam sweeping across the galaxy. And Voyager 2, in its decades-long journey, had drifted directly into that beam. The structure wasn't solid in any conventional sense. It appeared to be made of magnetic fields, organized, structured fields that held plasma in precise configurations, creating shapes and patterns on scales of hundreds of astronomical units. It was a machine built from the fundamental forces of the universe itself, assembled by something that understood physics at a level humanity couldn't begin to comprehend. Dr. Avi Loeb, chair of Harvard's astronomy department and a leading voice in the search for extraterrestrial technology, examined the image and made a statement that would be replayed millions of times across every news network on Earth. This is not a natural formation. This is architecture. We are looking at something built, designed, and operated by intelligence. And it's close. Frighteningly close. When astronomers calculated the distance to the structure based on Voyager 2's measurements, they arrived at a figure that stunned everyone: approximately 850 astronomical units from the Sun. For comparison, Voyager 2 itself was only 136 AU away. The structure was less than 7 times farther out than the spacecraft. Something massive and artificial had been sitting just beyond the edge of our solar system for who knows how long. And we'd had no idea it was there. The discovery triggered immediate and intense debate within scientific and governmental circles. If the structure had been there for decades, or centuries, or longer, why hadn't we detected it before? The answer was humbling. We'd never looked. All of our telescopes, all of our surveys, were focused outward, toward distant stars and galaxies. We'd been searching for extraterrestrial intelligence light years away, while ignoring our own cosmic backyard. The structure was dark, emitting no visible light, no infrared radiation, no radio waves, nothing that our Earth-based instruments would have picked up. It was only detectable through its gravitational and magnetic effects on the surrounding plasma. And the only reason we knew about it now was because Voyager 2 had physically traveled to its location and been engulfed by the plasma wave it was generating. On February the 2nd, NASA convened a closed-door briefing with representatives from the Department of Defense, the National Security Agency, the European Space Agency, and the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. The subject: threat assessment and response protocols. If the structure was a beacon or communication device, that was one scenario. But if it was a defensive installation, a weapon, or something with hostile intent, humanity needed to be prepared. The military analysis was grim. Based on the energy readings from Voyager 2, the structure was consuming power equivalent to approximately 0.01% of the Sun's total output. That was more energy than human civilization had used in its entire history, being continuously drawn and utilized for unknown purposes. If even a fraction of that energy could be weaponized and directed at Earth, there would be no defense, no warning, nothing humanity could do. But alongside the fear was a growing realization. The structure hadn't attacked. It had been broadcasting its plasma wave for possibly centuries, and it had never shown any hostile action. Voyager 2 had been inside the wave for weeks now. And while the spacecraft's systems were behaving strangely, they hadn't been damaged or destroyed. Perhaps the structure wasn't a threat. Perhaps it was exactly what it appeared to be: a beacon, a signpost, a marker left by something that had passed through our region of space long ago, placed there to announce its presence to any intelligence that might eventually arise. and Voyager 2, in its lonely journey through the cosmos, had finally found it. On February 7th, the plasma wave reached its peak intensity, and then, suddenly, began to recede. The density around Voyager 2 dropped. The magnetic fields relaxed. The cosmic ray bursts slowed. It was as if the wave had delivered its message and was now moving on, continuing its journey through the galaxy, sweeping outward to touch other solar systems, other worlds, other civilizations that might be listening. Voyager 2's instruments, which had been activated by the wave, began shutting down again. The ultraviolet spectrometer went dark. The radio astronomy instrument fell silent. The spacecraft returned to its normal configuration, continuing its endless drift into the void, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. In the days following the wave's passage, scientists analyzed every byte of data Voyager 2 had transmitted. Buried within the plasma measurements and magnetic field readings, they found patterns, mathematical sequences, prime numbers, ratios that corresponded to fundamental physical constants: the speed of light, Planck's constant, the fine structure constant. The wave had been carrying information, not random noise, but carefully encoded data designed to be recognizable to any scientifically literate civilization. When the full message was finally decoded, it contained three components. First, a coordinate system, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with markers indicating hundreds of locations. Each marker corresponded to a structure similar to the one Voyager 2 had encountered. They were scattered throughout the Milky Way, forming a network, a galactic infrastructure built by something with the patience and resources to engineer on scales beyond human comprehension. Second, a timeline, a sequence of dates stretching back 4.7 million years, the age of the structures. They had been built long before humans evolved, placed in position during the Pliocene epoch when our ancestors were still climbing trees in Africa. The builders, whoever they were, had been active in this galaxy while Earth was still a world of primitive apes. Third, an invitation. Encoded in the mathematical language of physics was a simple message. You have been noticed. You are not alone. When you are ready, follow the markers. We will be waiting. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just discovering evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. We were being welcomed into a galactic community, a network of civilizations that had left signposts throughout the Milky Way, creating a pathway for younger species to follow when they reached the threshold of interstellar capability. But the message also carried a darker implication. When you are ready. Not now. The structures were passive, waiting for civilizations to reach a certain level of technological and possibly ethical development before making full contact. The plasma wave was a test, a first step, a way of announcing their presence without overwhelming or threatening species that weren't yet prepared for the truth. And Earth, apparently, was still in the not ready category. In the weeks that followed, governments and scientific institutions struggled to decide how to respond. Some argued for immediate action, building more powerful probes, sending crewed missions, attempting to communicate directly with the structures. Others counseled patience, warning that rushing forward unprepared could be catastrophic. We didn't know who built the structures, what their intentions were, or what the consequences of contact might be. But the decision was ultimately made for us. On February 28th, exactly 50 days after the initial detection, Voyager 2 sent one final transmission. Not scientific data this time, just a simple message, repeating on all frequencies, "We are ready." Nobody at NASA had authorized that transmission. It hadn't come from any command sequence in the spacecraft's programming. Voyager 2 had decided, on its own, to respond to the invitation. As if the ancient probe, after decades of loneliness in the cosmic dark, had finally found what it was looking for, and it had spoken for all of us. Within 24 hours, the structures began responding. Not with plasma waves this time, but with visible light. One by one, the markers throughout the galaxy began illuminating. Astronomers around the world watched in awe as previously invisible structures lit up like cities coming to life, their positions matching exactly the coordinates embedded in the wave's message. The galaxy was revealing itself, showing us the map, inviting us to take the first step. And in the cold space beyond our solar system, Voyager 2 continued its journey. No longer a lonely wanderer, but a herald. The first human emissary to make contact with something far older, far wiser, and far more powerful than ourselves. It had detected what lay beyond our solar system, and what it found was terrifying not because it was hostile, but because it was waiting, watching, judging whether we were ready to join them. The question now is, are we?